His suitcase was in the trunk, packed, ready. He had a meeting in Spokane the following morning with his boss. He was supposed to be on the road by then. His silver 2005 Ford Thunderbird was found at the Staircase Ranger Station, Olympic National Park, Washington. Keys in the car, wallet in the car, suitcase in the trunk, everything a person needs to leave. Still there, still waiting. The date was June 25th, 2006. The car had been there since the day before. 62 people searched for 10 days. They used tracking dogs, a helicopter, a fixed-wing aircraft with forward-looking infrared thermal imaging, technology built to detect a living body's heat signature through dense forest canopy. They found nothing. Not a footprint, not a piece of clothing, not a single physical trace of the direction he had walked. His name was Gilbert Mark Gilman. He was 47 years old. He had survived things that most people will never come close to encountering. He did not survive a short walk with a camera. 19 years later, no one can explain why. Welcome to Dead Quiet. The Staircase area sits in the southeastern corner of Olympic National Park, about 30 minutes outside of Hoodsport, Washington. I want to be specific about the terrain because the terrain is used as the official explanation for why nothing was found, and the terrain does not support that explanation. The Staircase Rapids Loop, the most likely trail Gilman would have taken, is 2.1 miles, relatively flat. Old-growth Douglas fir, western hemlock, western red cedar, a well-marked loop that begins near the Staircase campground, a short walk from the ranger station. The kind of trail where getting genuinely lost requires making a specific decision to leave it. The North Fork Skokomish River Trail extends further into the park from the same trailhead, steeper, more remote, less traveled. If Gilman continued past the loop, that trail leads into increasingly rugged terrain, rocky ridges, dense forest, the river itself running cold and fast out of the Olympic high country. Difficult terrain, but not terrain where 62 people, tracking dogs, and FLIR thermal imaging should find nothing. That outcome, zero physical evidence from a 10-day search with those resources, is not what rugged terrain produces. Rugged terrain produces bodies, gear, clothing, a trail where the search ended. It produces something. The Staircase search produced nothing. That is not the forest being difficult. That is something else. Before I tell you what happened on June 24th, I need to tell you who Gilbert Gilman actually was. The public record describes him as the Deputy Director of the Washington State Department of Retirement Systems, a pension fund administrator, a state government official. That description is accurate, and it is insufficient. In 2008, KIRO TV investigated Gilman's background and reported that he had previously worked on top-secret military intelligence assignments and, their words, led a mysterious life. Here is what the documented record shows. Gilbert Gilman served in the United States Army as a military interrogator. He took assignments in counterterrorism and counterintelligence. He worked with the United Nations in New York. He traveled professionally to Belgium, the United Kingdom, China, Panama, Israel, Kuwait, Somalia, and Iraq, a travel history that covers nearly every active conflict zone and intelligence hub of the preceding 2 decades. He was fluent in 4 languages: English, Arabic, Russian, and Chinese. He moved from New York to Washington State shortly before his disappearance to manage Sandy Matheson's 2004 congressional campaign, and subsequently joined her office as Deputy Director of the State Pension Fund. I want to be careful here. I am not suggesting that a man with that background cannot also be a person who takes casual day hikes. People are more than their professional histories. What I'm suggesting is that when you read the circumstances of his disappearance, what he was wearing, what he was carrying, what he left behind, against the background I have just described, a different set of questions becomes available. And those questions have never been answered publicly. Saturday, June 24th, 2006. Gilman arrived at the Staircase Ranger Station sometime in the morning. He parked his silver Ford Thunderbird in the lot. He was carrying a camera. He was wearing a bright blue and green Hawaiian shirt, khaki pants, sandals, prescription sunglasses, the kind he depended on, because without them, by the documented record, he was functionally near blind. No backpack, no water, no food, no gear of any kind. Park Ranger Sani Lustig made contact with him in the parking lot. She heard music playing loudly from his car and went to ask him to turn it down. They had a brief conversation. Lustig said later, "I could actually hear the music playing in his car. So I went out to see what was going on. I had a brief conversation with him and asked him to turn down the music. I got the sense he was going for a hike." That conversation was the last documented contact between Gilbert Gilman and any other human being. The following morning, Sunday, June 25th, Gilman failed to appear for his planned meeting with Sandy Matheson in Spokane. She reported his absence. Authorities checked the staircase lot. His car was still there, exactly where Ranger Lustig had seen it 24 hours earlier. The suitcase was in the trunk. His wallet and keys were in the car. A man who intends to go for a short walk and come back does not leave his wallet. A man who misses a meeting leaves a trail. A phone call, a text, a wrong turn that can be retraced. Gilman left nothing. The search began immediately upon locating the car. Over the following 10 days, the operation expanded to 62 ground personnel. K9 tracking units were deployed, multiple dogs, different handlers, different entry points into the search area. A helicopter conducted aerial sweeps of the terrain. A fixed-wing aircraft equipped with forward-looking infrared FLIR thermal imaging flew grid patterns over the forest. FLIR technology is worth understanding in this context. It detects heat differential, the thermal signature of a body against its environment. It can identify a living person through moderate vegetation. It can identify a body in the cooling stages after death. It is not perfect, but in the terrain around Staircase, not the deep rainforest interior, not 1,000 feet of old growth canopy overhead. It is a significant asset. The dogs found no scent trail to follow. The FLIR found no heat signature. The 62 ground personnel found no physical evidence of Gilman's direction of travel. After 10 days, the U.S. Forest Service terminated the official search. The conclusion, as documented, Gilbert Gilman had likely met his end somewhere in Olympic National Park. The specific circumstances were unknown. That conclusion has not materially changed in 19 years. I want to present 3 specific problems with the official position, not theories, problems, points where the documented record does not support the conclusion that Gilbert Gilman simply became lost and died in the staircase area. The first problem is the dogs. Tracking dogs in a search and rescue context are not simply looking for a person. They follow a scent trail. A scent trail does not require the subject to still be present. It persists in the environment for hours, sometimes days, depending on conditions. A trained search dog can establish a direction of travel, can track where a trail changes, can identify the point where a trail enters water and potentially exits it. The K9 units at Staircase found nothing to follow. This is not a failure of the search. It is a data point. It tells us that either the scent trail was rendered undetectable, which requires time, water immersion, or deliberate countermeasure, or that the dogs were deployed in an area where Gilman had not, in fact, traveled. A man who stepped off a trail, became disoriented, and died of exposure in the forest does not leave no scent trail. His last hours would have produced one. The dogs should have had something to follow. They did not. The second problem is the glasses. Gilbert Gilman wore prescription eyeglasses. The documented record is specific. He was functionally near blind without them. His prescription sunglasses were found in his car. He walked into a forest in sandals on an unfamiliar trail without the one item he required to navigate the physical world. If his disappearance was accidental, if he became disoriented and wondered, the absence of his glasses makes that outcome considerably more likely and considerably faster. A near-blind man in unfamiliar forest terrain without corrective lenses does not last long. He does not travel far. He does not evade 62 searches and FLIR imaging for 10 days. If his disappearance was deliberate, if he chose to walk away, the glasses present a different kind of problem. A man planning a controlled exit, someone who has thought through the evidence he leaves behind, does not leave the one item he cannot function without, unless he had a replacement pair. Unless leaving them behind was part of the evidence construction, a detail designed to support the narrative of an accidental disappearance. A man with counterintelligence training understands evidence construction. I am not telling you which reading is correct. I am telling you that the glasses, either way, are a problem more for a clean explanation. The third problem is the money. As of the documented record, and this detail has been confirmed by the Charlie Project, the official national missing persons database, Gilbert Gilman's bank accounts are still under active monitoring by investigators. Authorities have stated their basis for this explicitly: the theory that he went missing intentionally. They are watching for financial activity that would confirm he is alive and accessed his accounts. Gilman was legally declared dead in June 2015, 9 years after his disappearance. His bank accounts continued to be monitored after that declaration. I want you to understand what this means in investigative terms. Law enforcement does not maintain active financial monitoring of a deceased person's accounts as routine procedure. This is a resource-intensive commitment. It is maintained when investigators believe there is a genuine, active possibility that the person is alive. The legal death declaration was a legal and administrative necessity for his estate, for his family, for the courts. It was not an investigative conclusion. The investigators watching his accounts have not reached the same conclusion as the death certificate. In 2014, an investigation discovery television program raised a possibility that the documented record, independently of the program, gives reason to take seriously Israel Keyes. Keyes was a serial killer who died by suicide in Anchorage in December 2012, while in custody following his confession to the kidnapping and murder of an 18-year-old Anchorage barista named Samantha Koenig. Before his death, he told investigators he had killed at least 11 people across the country between 2001 and 2012. 5 of those murders, by his own account, occurred while he lived on Washington's Olympic Peninsula, in the Makah tribal community of Neah Bay, where he worked as a contractor and carpenter from 2001 to 2007. The FBI confirmed he had dumped at least one body in Lake Crescent, a lake within Olympic National Park, west of Port Angeles, with a maximum depth of over 600 feet. They confirmed this detail because Keyes provided it. They have never recovered a body from the lake. The FBI also confirmed, through a public records request by the Peninsula Daily News, that Keyes was issued overnight backcountry permits to access Olympic National Park during his time in Neah Bay. 2 specific permits are documented. One issued August 13th, 2005, and one issued June 17th, 2006. June 17th, 2006. 7 days before Gilbert Gilman disappeared at the Staircases trailhead. There is one more documented proximity detail. On June 11th, 2006, 13 days before Gilman's disappearance, Israel Keyes competed in the Olympic Discovery Marathon in Port Angeles, Washington. He placed 90th. Port Angeles to the Staircase trailhead is approximately 40 miles. The FBI's public statement on the possible connection reads as follows: FBI investigators find that it is highly unlikely that Keyes is connected to the unsolved disappearance of Gilbert Mark Gilman. I want to read that statement carefully because it has been widely reported as the FBI ruling out any connection. That is not what the statement says. Highly unlikely is a probabilistic assessment. It is not a definitive exclusion. When the Peninsula Daily News asked FBI Assistant Special Agent in charge Kevin Donovan whether the FBI had investigated the possible connection, he declined to confirm or deny specifics. But he said this: as a matter of procedure, that would be a logical investigative step. He also said, we would not want some family member to read that we looked at a connection and have their first knowledge of that from reading it in a newspaper. That statement is not a denial. That is a man being very careful about what he confirms in print. Israel Keyes is dead. He spent his final months giving investigators fragments, partial confessions, oblique references, deliberate misdirection. The FBI acknowledged before his death that he had committed murders they had not been able to attribute to him, and that the full scope of his victims remained unknown. The connection between Keyes and Gilman has not been confirmed. It has not been ruled out. Those are different things. There is a trail in the Staircase area that search volunteers and local residents have discussed openly in the documented record. It is called the Shady Lane Trail. The Shady Lane Trail runs downstream on the south bank of the Skokomish River. It eventually connects to Lightning Peak Road, Forest Road 2451. That road crosses Lake Cushman at Bear Gulch and joins Forest Road 24, which connects to Hoodsport, and from there to US Highway 101. The Peninsula Daily News documented this route explicitly in their coverage of Gilman's disappearance, noting, in their own words, that Highway 101 eventually leads to anywhere in the world to hide. Gilman's mother, Doris Gilman, believed her son may have chosen to disappear, that he leveraged his counterintelligence background and his language skills to transition into a covert life, that he walked out of the staircase area deliberately by a route that the official search did not adequately cover. I want to treat this theory with the seriousness it deserves because it comes from his family and because the documented evidence does not eliminate it. A man with his background would know how covert transitions work. He would know what a controlled exit looks like from the outside. He would know that a person who leaves their wallet, their keys, and their packed suitcase in a national park will be presumed dead, and that presumption is its own form of cover. What he could not account for in that theory is his mother. The years she spent waiting. The petition she filed to become estate trustee in 2015, 9 years after his disappearance, so that she could begin to close what remained open. If Gilbert Gilman chose to disappear, if he is alive somewhere under a different name, in a country where his Arabic or Russian or Chinese made the transition easier, he left his mother with nothing, no closure, no explanation. 19 years of not knowing. I do not know whether that is something he would have done. What I know is that it cannot be ruled out, and neither can anything else. Here is what the documented record gives us when you read it as evidence. A man with the specific skills to construct a disappearance walked into a national park in a manner inconsistent with any recreational purpose. He left behind a packed suitcase, a missed meeting, a wallet, a set of keys. 62 searchers found nothing, not because the terrain made it impossible, but because there was nothing to find in the area they searched. The dogs had no trail. The FLIR found no signature. This is not a search that ran out of resources. This is a search that ran out of evidence. His bank accounts are still being watched. 19 years after he walked away from his car, investigators have not made their peace with the death certificate. A confirmed serial killer who murdered 5 people on the same peninsula was issued a backcountry permit to that park 7 days before Gilman disappeared. The FBI's statement on that connection is careful, measured, and specifically avoids the word ruled out. I have spent time with every documented theory. The accident theory requires us to accept that a near-blind man in sandals with survival training died quickly in moderate terrain and left zero physical evidence for 62 people across 10 days. The voluntary disappearance theory requires us to accept that a man with counterintelligence experience chose to leave his mother with nothing and has maintained operational security for 19 years. The third theory requires us to accept that a documented killer who operated by targeting people in remote locations 7 days after accessing this park had nothing to do with the man who vanished from it. None of these theories is comfortable. None of them is impossible. The case is still open. The bank accounts are still being watched. The forest is still there. The Staircase Rapids Loop is still open. 2.1 miles. Relatively flat. Old-growth Douglas fir, western hemlock, western red cedar. Rangers patrol it regularly. Nothing on the trailhead sign tells you that in June 2006, a man parked in this lot and 62 people could not find where he went. Nothing tells you that his file is still open, that his money is still being watched. That somewhere in the documented record, in FBI interview transcripts that have not been made public, in a backcountry permit issued 7 days before he disappeared, in whatever Ranger Lustig heard in that brief conversation in the parking lot. There may be something that explains what happened on a Saturday morning in Olympic National Park 19 years ago. Or there may not be. Some questions are designed to stay open. Some forests keep what they take. Gilbert Gilman has been legally dead since 2015. His case remains classified as endangered missing. Those two facts sit in the same file and do not explain each other. In the wild, silence is never empty.